The sculptured material by the Londoner Richard Deacon is all about vision, forms in steel that are in no way abstract but taken from nature and drawn into space. Invite their visual possession only instantly to evade our gaze again, and thus reason.
Fine, deaf and dumb. I began making sculpture when I was 14. I'd always been very jealous of my father and my brother's practicality. And it was a great relief to find that I could actually make something that seemed to handle materials in a way that was a bit like my father and my brother. I continued making sculpture for many years. I went to college in London. By the time the late 70s came, I'd made quite a lot of sculpture, but I was growing increasingly unhappy with the way I made it. It was as if I knew what I wanted to make, but I didn't know how to make it. Untitled 80. Carving and modeling weren't what I wanted to do. I always wanted to make sculpture. And there's always that problem when you make things that it involves putting one thing on top of another thing. And so that tension was built into the work. Untitled 81. As well, there was the question of meaning in the sculpture, and two things happened. One, I realized that a lot of what I was doing was putting one thing on top of another thing, and that that process of building up by laminating had wasn't only practical, but also had implications for what things meant. National Gallery in London, there's a painting by Poussin. The painting's called Landscape with a Man Killed by a Snake. In the painting, we see the bottom left, a figure wrapped up in a snake. Further up to the right, we see another figure running away from looking at the man killed by the snake, running away with his hand partly up, another hand gesturing out. On a bank immediately behind, we see a lady with her arms outstretched. The lady is looking at the man who's looking at the man killed by the snake. Behind the lady, there's a lake. On the lake are some fishermen carrying on with their fishing, ignorant of what's happening in the rest of the painting. The man killed by the snake is very obscure. The red eye of the snake is very prominent. Each of the figures in the painting occupies a stage, one behind the other. And at any point, from any one point, only two figures can see each other. The dialogue that occurs in the painting is one between distance and closeness, between inside and outside. The painting itself is a metaphor for vision. The only certain things in the painting are that one man is dead and some people fishing in the background know nothing. The man calls for assistance with his hand, but also warns her back. The woman welcomes him with her arms, but also pushes him off. When we look at things, we both bring them close to us and we put them away. When we kiss someone, we close our eyes. But when we look at pornography, we bring things close to it. We consume them with our eyes. So the act of the voyeur is a means by which we possess. But also the act of looking is the way in which we put things at a distance.
For those who have eyes,
the conflict between the inside and the outside is a conflict between the desire to know and the inability to know. So that when we see things, we're inside them. But when we say things, when we describe things, we are outside them. So that when we give things meaning, we are inside them. When we say what they are, we're outside them. So that the relationship between the inside and the outside in the sculpture has to do with allowing a space inside the work, which is the carrier of the meaning of the work, and which is potentially accessible, but which, once you're inside, you're unable to comprehend the form of the outside. So where the work is on the boundary between the inside and the outside. The stress in the work, as well as dealing with questions of the material and the way it's made, etc., has to do with that dialogue between the wish to know and the wish to gain an understanding and meaning, however metaphorical that understanding may be, and the inability to know.
Art for Other People, number 18.
One time my son told me a joke, which was, what do you get if you cross a parrot with a centipede? Centipede being an insect with many legs that crawls. The answer to the joke is a walkie-talkie. I thought the joke was almost perfect in a way, because it put two things together that didn't exist together and brought out a third thing. Those things are separate in our knowledge, but it's within the joke, within language, that they come together with a certain kind of logic.
On the face of it.
The point of it in relation to why I think it's good, why I think it's a useful thing to talk about in relation to the work, is that the work often has many apparently recognizable items in it, and it brings together those recognizable items, and they maintain their recognition. Similarly, in the work, the combination of factors, of resemblance, of ways of making things, of material, of the relationship between the inside and the outside, brings together apparently disparate things to create something else, some other item.
Between the two of us. Two minds, number two.